So as Juana's chair, I am delighted to be introducing her. So radical remembering, writes the poet Jake Skeets, is, quote, the ability to travel through time, space, and existence, unquote. Oh, actually, keep quoting. A blank page becomes an altar where the memory field is teased into existence. Juana Santana's poems are altars to memory, constructed with care and mystery, woven in Spanish and English, creating tapestries of stories about family and place that feel animated by the grief of wide distances, both physical and psychological. The poetry in her beautiful collection, which is currently untitled, but will probably find the time very soon, often reminds me of a clear, still lake in summer, deceptively calm, both mirroring reality and obscuring the depths below. The speakers in this book are propelled by a deep ache for home, a desire that carries the voices and figures in these poems across the borders of cities, states, countries, and into surrealist dreamscapes where the poet exists suddenly in the bone-colored shell of a womb. You'll also find a poet in the terracotta winds of Michoacan, traveling through the Georgia hills, remembering her mother on the corner of Olive and Palm, and searching for echoes of childhood with stones and rosemary ice cubes tucked in her pocket. All the while, the work deftly circles with what in the final poem is named an opaque silence. It's the silence of unspoken exile, and it's the silence of art. Many of the poems here are in conversation with visual art, textile arts, handmade artifacts and woven fabrics. Quote, piece by piece, she was trying to conjure her existence, unquote, says the speaker in the poem, The Glass Palette. Juana, I can feel you conjuring your existence in these poems, staking your claim to life, to feeling and memory, and honoring those who came before you, who sustain you even from afar. May you continue to bring yourself into being through art. So please join me in welcoming Juana Santana.
Hello, thank you to everyone who's joining us. For my introduction, I did want to preface that the poems that I'm going to be reading tonight, they address various aspects of who I am, how I grew up, and the values that my family has instilled in me. I'm going to be starting off with the poem titled Mañana esto será leña. Mañana esto será leña. This should ignite you. In a class, my peers ask questions about ice. They ask how it's become shields against fear. Most nights, my eyes peel open from too much overhearing. On a phone call, his 70-year-old mentor can't stand it anymore. She spills petróleo past the line and into my skin, my hands, my face, into my ears. I can't help but rub the darkness into my teeth. Quizás nunca sabrá que su tos was overheard by esa gente. In my room, reading about collagen, her voice tightens the tendons of my fingers. I can't scroll anymore. Ay, Dios mío, it's not fair, you know. The Bracero program was good. It worked, but now it's different. After every spill, I hear the deep Spanish. After every spill, she adds reassurance. I know. I can't listen to silence without adding more tightness. Leave the lamp on all night, just in case something happens. Yesterday, while steaming broccoli, my father sends me a message. Tu mamá no se siente bien. Over the phone, as I steam, I can hear it in her whistling S's. There's something about her eye, the pressure, maybe the static back in Georgia. The next poem is titled, There Are Fallen Pine Cones at My Feet. There are fallen pine cones at my feet. Estoy sentada en un banco hecho de madera fragmentada, color amarillo amaranto, in the axis between finding, found, lost, banished. In the entry of my home, you will find me, crumbled, curled crescent, creo estar donde estoy, in the beads of salt that gravitates at their feet, en la esquina del puesto de mis padres, sigo siendo aquella presencia que no durará por mucho. Será el silencio incómodo en la vendimia, las manos que faltan. Si la gorra de mi padre hablara. Si la gorra de mi padre hablara, she would whisper years of a man who became a father too soon. How his hands went from measuring and selling tela to splintered fingers. Si la gorra de mi padre hablara, she would tell you how he went from waxing floors in el aeropuerto to carrying stacks of wood on his shoulders as he balanced his weight on the skeleton of the house. Si la gorra de mi padre hablara, she would murmur how he lost sensitivity to the heat, how the helix of his ears grew purple during the winter. He adjusted to feel the trembling of his teeth and the numbing of his hands. Si la gorra de mi padre hablara, she would show you how her stitching grew thin and her colors muted. November. The stillness of the winter morning blew past the diminishing trees. My father sat at the bottom of a rotting porch. As he ever so often tapped his boot on the cracked concrete, the red and brown dirt still sticking to his boots, tinting the faded color of his once light brown boots. Sitting, he waited for the splattered white van. The van that honked its horn day after day, disregarding the harsh winds, heavy rains, or scorching heat. My father waited, his weight on the cooler bending the last step. Aluminum wrapped stew and tortillas held the only warmth we could offer. Clusters of leaves piling around my father, a mass of amulets and pins of the years and time he spent working. My father waited, sitting on his cooler like an old oak, tilting more as time trickles past. Now I wait, fearing the day the pressure will snap your thick core. My final poem is slightly shorter, and it is a poem that I wrote recently and that connects both my relationship with my mother and my passage to motherhood. This poem is titled Second Child, First Daughter, Dulce como Piloncillo. When Mama introduced Piloncillo, I was young and drawn to ask por qué. Fui joven, crystalline syrup, thick brown sweetness, tonos de caramelo fundido, demasiado joven para comprender el peso del azúcar de caña. I've held pure sugar cane in the palms of my hands, submerged in the deep iridescence of atole, entre sugar and cinnamon. digged my way through a sinkhole of earthly molasses. Motherhood calls to those whose bellies harden at the sound of snapping bones. En la pirámide entre madre e hija existe un vínculo que las une más dulce y fuerte que calcio o azúcar. Thank you.